Sounds good. Well, thanks for joining us today. Happy Friday, everybody. We're glad to have you here for our Friday 5 Live conversation. And if you have any questions or comments during the session, you can just use the chat. And please be sure to select everyone there in that drop-down box when you send your messages. And the recording will be available to you by early next week. If you're a GoToKnowledge member, the recording will be on your dashboard, and otherwise we will email it to you. And our host today is Meg Foster. Meg has spent 20 years in higher education, focused on student success initiatives and working in areas such as orientation, faculty development, online learning, student leadership, and first-year initiatives. And Meg, I will pass it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Just as another housekeeping note in our slides, which Melissa will make sure available to everybody. If you'd like to share our Friday 5 Lives with folks, we are now in our 3rd season, and we'll make sure this one is posted on Monday. It's always available on all of your favorite podcasting stations, and I say it pairs nicely with, a cup of tea or a walk or an adult beverage, at the end of a long week. So know that you've got lots of resources here to share with faculty and staff. But I am really fortunate to have with us today Dr. John Donnelly, who is, I guess, sort of technically, I work for Dr. Donnelly. I hadn't really put that all together today. He is the Vice President for Instruction and Student Services at Piedmont, Virginia Community College, and has worked for a number of years in a variety of different capacities within community colleges, both in Virginia as well as in Massachusetts. And we're really thrilled to have John with us today as a resource as we talk through these kinds of concepts around student-ready institutions and what that means. But I just want to give a shout out. Dr. Donnelly was recently appointed to the American Association of Community Colleges Commission on Student Success. And that work has always been important, but I think it has never been more important than it is now. So, John, we just really appreciate that you're doing that work and taking that time out of a really demanding role that you're in to help kind of community colleges across our country think about how we can be places of learning for our students and help them to be successful. So thank you for that and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation and look forward to a great conversation.
So as always, I have some questions for us to guide our conversation. And don't forget, our listening audience, if you're joining us today, that we love your questions as well. Feel free to use that chat to share with us questions that might pop up through our conversation. So just to get us started, John, I had the opportunity to listen to you at our faculty, our all faculty meeting before school started, and would love for you to kind of define for us, what does it mean to be student ready? Because this is, I feel like now that I'm paying attention to this, I'm hearing this term everywhere, lots of emails about how do we assess if we're student ready, institutions popping up on listservs and things like that. So look forward to your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. The term student-ready college is not a new term. It actually comes from a book published in 2016 entitled "Becoming a Student-Ready College," and there's a subtitle on top of that as well. But in the book, the authors sort of set out challenges to leaders of colleges and universities to essentially restructure the college experience for students. To make it most likely that they would succeed. And success means meeting their goals, right? So said another way, they challenged us to look at everything that we do through a lens of promoting student success, right? So that's the large, broad pieces of it. But sort of as you drill down, it really then is incumbent on you as an institution and as a leader of an institution to define some of those broad terms. And so for us at PVCC, we took that challenge and are taking that challenge, and so we now just defined what student success is for us, and what we define that as is, and it's one word, and that's completion. For a long time, we weren't as focused on completion. We were focused in on access. But now we're focused on completion. And what that means is that students who come to us, we want them to earn a degree. We want them to earn a certificate. We want them to earn a post-secondary credential that will lead them to be able to post-secondary success, which for us at the community college means transfer to a four-year institution, the one that they want to transfer to, or get a job that pays a family-sustaining wage that allows you to live in the area where you are. So it's all about completion. So translate that to on the ground. What we're doing then as a student-ready college is that we are designing all of our services. That's everything that we do, policies, procedures, actions, to facilitate a student's progressive advancement towards completion, towards earning that degree and certificate or post-secondary credential. And it sounds simple, but it's not, because it's a cultural shift. But when you look at it and the student ready piece, I think sort of you have to sort of say it a lot before it sort of makes sense to you, because we always use the term, and everybody knows the term, college ready students, right? We all want college ready students. College ready students are those that are ready on day one. They're ready to learn. They're prepared. They know the rigors of college. They know the expectations. They're ready, and we want them as college administrators. Our faculty want them as faculty. But in the reality, that's not our students. It just isn't our students. And so the student ready college is one that does not seek out college ready students. It is ready for the students that it has. It meets those students just where they are when they reach our door, regardless of their academic preparation, regardless of their strengths and weaknesses. It meets them just where they are and welcomes them and provides a supportive environment that allows them to get to their goals.
I just love this. Because as we've talked, I've worked now so long in the community college, and that's who we serve, right, is the community. And certainly, though I think many of our four-year institutions do something similar as well. And you're right, it would be great if we were all filled with college-ready students. But I don't know if anybody else is reading the national data coming out of the last 2 years of learning. I don't think it matters what institution you're at. Maybe our Harvards and our Yales will hold them off here, but I think all kinds of institutions are seeing students who are not what we would traditionally think of as college ready. So I think we all have a lot to learn about how can we be institutions that are student ready and ready to meet those students where they are.
Yeah, and for community college specifically, being open access, and one of the pillars that we believe in is access for all. And when we say access for all, we mean all, right? Not this population or that population. It's everybody, from the most advanced, prepared, and ready college ready student to the one that is incarcerated and has never earned a GED before. It's that spectrum, and that's it's not really a spectrum, but any student who comes to our door, because we are open access institutions, we need to be ready to do everything that we can to help that student along the way to get to earn a degree or certificate or post-secondary credential, whatever they're going for. And if there's policies, procedures in place that prevent that, we need to break those down. We need to change those. And so that everybody has the potential and the opportunity to be successful.
Well, I think that's a really kind of nice segue into this next question, and I'm going to circle back to the changing of the policies and procedures piece, because I think having done this work for a little while, sometimes those things, you have lots of conversations around that, but you've talked about kind of these 4 buckets maybe that comprise how PVCC is sort of examining or looking towards student ready, being a student ready institution. So I would love for you to kind of share those with us, because I think they're probably things other institutions can relate to as well.
Yeah, so the question is for a lot of people when you sort of put out that concept of being a student-ready college, sounds simple, but in actuality, there's some work involved here. And if we're going to restructure our institutions and everything that we do, where do we begin? How do we frame that, right? How do we begin to even frame that? Because the things that we do, we think we're doing correctly. We think we're doing it right, and we may be considering all students, the same. But how do we sort of, what's the framework? And this is not new, but there's student success frameworks out there, and one of those is called the pathway model, and you can look that up and find it. But it's the student success framework, and it does use the term pathways, and that's a confusing term sometimes. But when we sort of look at everything we do, we want to put them into these 4 buckets. All policies, procedures, actions, everything that we do, put them into these 4 buckets. So the first bucket that you'll hear, or the first characteristic, or whatever you want to call it, category, is clarifying the pathway for students. So if the end result is a degree or certificate, post-secondary credential, we have to show them the pathway to that. We can't just say, come to us, earn your degree, and go, right? But we've done that for a long time. Now we have to say, but here's the path you need to follow. So we need to do things like mapping out courses towards the degree, or the learning outcomes. We need to be very explicit in saying, if you do these things, this will lead you to completion of your degree, certificate, post-secondary credential. So it's sort of clarifying it, not just saying go figure it out, but providing that clarity of path for them. What are the milestones you want to hit? What are the courses you need to take? What semester you need to take them in? Those kind of things. That's number one. And number two, it's sort of helping students choose the pathway, right? So we can clarify the pathway, but there's a lot of pathways depending on the institution you're at, right? You may have 50, 100, 150 degree certificates, post-secondary credentials that you're offering. So how do we help the student choose the right one for them? And that takes some work through advising and interacting with students, and career interest surveys, all those kind of things, to say, here are the ones that may be right for you, and then helping that student define which one is the one they're going after, and that is going to eventually meet their post-secondary goals. So helping them choose is number two, and really important. And number three is that, once we've identified and laid out the pathway, they've chosen it, now we got to do everything that we can to keep them on that pathway. Because guess what? They'll fall off. It happens all the time. It happens to us. It happens to everyone. They will fall off the path. So what we need to do very quickly is to realize that, number one, because they may not realize they've fallen off the path, or they may not let anybody know they've fallen off the path. But we've got to have ways of telling when that student has fallen off the path, and to quickly get to them and get them back on. The longer that they wait, or the longer they're off the path, the less likely they are to get back on. So we've got to help them stay on that path. Hopefully they'll stay on it and do well, but for those who don't, we need to quickly intervene to get them back on. And then undergirding it all, which is the fourth category, or the fourth bucket, is we got to ensure that they're learning through all of this, right? So it's important that, while they're on the pathway, while they're going through the coursework, they're actually learning the knowledge, skills, abilities, competencies that are required, that are essential for them to be successful, whether they go to the 4-year and transfer, or whether they get into that job. Because if they're not learning what we want them to learn, or what they need to learn, we haven't done our job fully. So all along the way, they must be learning, and they must be meeting the outcomes of the program, the outcomes of the courses, and then our transfer outcomes, or our occupational outcomes for the job that they're looking for. So those are the kind of the 4 things, and we keep those 4 things in mind when we're doing policies and procedures or practices. We're saying, okay, which one of those 4 does this fit into? Is this identifying? Is this choosing and entering? Is this keeping them on? Or is this learning? And if it doesn't quite fit into there, we start to question, to say, is this really what we want to do? Or do we need to reframe so it fits into one of those categories?
So I want to now, I think, address, so the policies and procedures. And I really liked how you said, institutions, we've built these structures that, we think they're working, right? And certainly I think I've worked now in higher ed long enough to know that there are trends, things come, things go. But what advice do you have regarding kind of that piece? Because I can see that being, in some ways, it's almost probably the easiest work is to like hire new advisors, right? Or find more money for tutors or something to that effect. I would think that structural shift and change, that cultural shift and change is probably some of the hardest work. So any advice on that?
Yeah, it is hard because I think, our tendency is to develop policies and procedures that treat all students the same. And we tend to default to the student that is doing well. And so we're going to sort of do all the policies, procedures, everything that we're doing for that population. But again, if we're really truly trying to meet every student where they are, to provide a nurturing and welcome environment for them so that they can succeed, we really have to sort of look at our own preconceived notions, right? And I'm guilty of this as a faculty member when I first started out teaching, and the fact that I wanted those college-ready students, and the ones that weren't, the ones that didn't engage with me, the ones that didn't do well on their tests, the ones that hadn't read the homework the night before, I sort of said, well, they're not with me, so I'm going to really focus my energy on those that are, the ones that are looking at me, the ones that are doing well on their tests. And so that's a reframing to say, no, I certainly need to work with those, but I also need to help these students and engage these students that are not doing as well. Because if I focus my efforts on the successful students, I am putting barriers up in front of those who are not. And I think our natural tendency is to blame the student, right? To blame the student for their lack of success. Is to say, well, if only they were more prepared, or if only they didn't have that part-time job that takes away from them being able to come to class and study, right? Again, that's the students we'd like to have. It's not the students we have. So what we have to do is stop blaming the student for their lack of success. They do have some responsibility for that, to be sure. We're not absolving them of that. But what we need to do is we need to look at our policies and procedures to make sure, and that goes from teaching techniques in the classroom to policies at the administrative level, to food service, to parking, to clean classrooms. We need to look at everything that we do and say, are we putting up an artificial barrier, unintentionally, to be sure, that is going to turn a student away? That they're going to come here and say, nope, that's not for me. I don't like that, or that doesn't work for me, so I'm going to turn around and walk away. And that happens a lot, right? We have so many students who come to us and they disappear. And we don't really know what happened to them. I wish we had the time to bring them back and say, why, what happened? But we clearly, some of that is barriers we're putting in front of students. But part of that is probably their life too. Life happens, and we understand that. But I can feel very confident that we're student-ready college if we break all those barriers down, if we've really done the work of looking at policies, procedures, practices from the buildings and grounds person all the way to the faculty member in the classroom. And if we've really, really done our work and cleared those barriers, we're not going to have 100% success. But I know that I'm not causing, or I'm not responsible for the majority of the lack of that success. I can now sort of say, okay, I feel confident that this is the environment that is best conducive to allowing these students to succeed. And that's a shift, right? That's a huge shift. So many employees, I think, don't feel like they have a responsibility to student success because they don't directly deal with the student. But everybody does. Every single person at this institution, at any institution, has a role in student success. We've got to, number one, convince people show them how they impact students. And then to start thinking about those ways of, it's not the student's fault. Let's take some responsibility and break those barriers down that we're putting in place, and then see where we go. And guarantee you that our student success measures, if we're successful, our student success measures that we sort of look at will start to improve, and that's a good thing.
So I'm curious sorry, and I'm going off our scripted questions here again. I think you make such important points, and it really ties into, I think, a lot of the research regarding retention and why we know students stay in school, right? And as I preach to my first year experience students, you need to know who your person is, right? Like, and that you can go to, you can ask them any question. Everybody needs somebody on campus that is their kind of go-to person. And I always say that doesn't have to be a faculty member, right? It can be anybody on staff. It could be the groundskeeper. So how do institutions help everybody who works there kind of understand this concept of we're student ready, we're student success focused, and that everybody has a role, every person has a role in that? I hope that question kind of makes sense. Like, how do you get there as an institution?
I think it takes time. This isn't a week transformation. This is a multi-year transformation. How we're doing it is that we are showing people the data on our student success measures. We're showing them some of the standard student success data points that you would see, some of our recruiting and onboarding performance indicators, but specifically our first year momentum performance indicators, how many students will complete 24 credits in a year, how many students are taking English in their first year, how many are taking math in their first year, the fall to fall, spring retention, those kind of things. And then of course, completion indicators, graduation rates, those kind of things. And it's not we're showing folks, this is where we are. Right? This is where we are. This is not a value judgment here. This is not, we're doing badly. Yeah, if you see a low number, it's a low number. That's all it is. It's not that, boy, we're not doing that right. It is what it is, right? And then we sort of say, well, what can we do to help those metrics, right? And that kind of frames for everybody, because when we look at those recruitment, onboarding, momentum, completion, that's the life cycle of a student. And everybody at our institution is going to touch a student somehow or impact a student somehow in that life cycle. So we're showing these data points and then challenging people to say, not to tell them, but to ask them, how might you impact that success measure? Where do you fit in? Where does your role at this institution fit into these success measures? And we haven't had one person say, no, none of that's at mine. I just can't claim. Everybody says, oh yeah, well I can impact this and this and this, and it may not all be the same. And there may be some that are, faculty, for instance, impact more than others. But I think everybody has that, and then that starts them thinking to say, oh yeah, so now how am I going to impact that? How might I, changing my past behaviors or my policies or my procedures, how might that impact or change those metrics to move towards the positive, to be better or increase or whatever that is? And that gets people thinking, and that's really helped us. Data can be scary. Data can be used as a weapon, and we're not doing that. Data is data for us, and we say, here's where we are. Where do we want to be? And then how can we all get there on all of those metrics? And we have established those we call them student success measures. We've established those, and we'll be collecting data vigorously and aggressively, capturing data every semester, every year, challenging groups of people to look at those data, to interpret those data, and then to make action plans from those data to say, what do we need to do? What is that data showing us? And moving forward that way. So we're sort of in the introductory phase now of saying, here's the data, how can you impact this? And then when we have our first sort of data point, bringing groups of people together, faculty and advisors, student success leaders, business office and buildings and grounds folks, and talking to the administration, and then sort of making definite plans and challenging people to set goals to make the difference and to help change things for the better, to be student ready.
I really appreciate your discussion about data. As I kind of mentioned, that's come across just this week on several different listservs that I'm on nationally around how are institutions capturing student ready data. And so, and I think you're wise, but I think you're wise to think institutionally specific. I mean, I'm sure there's standards that we can all look at, but I think it's also important to say Piedmont Virginia Community College is not Piedmont Community College, right? Which serves a very large area in Charlotte, North Carolina. There are two different schools with two different groups of students who they're interacting with. I'm also thinking, as you're speaking, John, about what we know about enrollment trends, and we know our community colleges have really suffered in the last 2 years as far as enrollment goes, and that there are groups of students that we're very concerned about who are not showing up on our campuses, Black males in particular, from the data. But also that, there are 39 million American adults who have some college credits, but no degree or certificate. And so one of the conversations I feel like I'm engaging a lot with is students look different potentially than they did 20 years ago. And the students that we're going to be enrolling in our classes may be coming to us with some past college credits and some non-success experiences. And so if we're thinking in a student-ready ways, right, we're thinking about the fact that those populations that we may be attracting are a little bit different than they were 5 or 10 years ago. And maybe coming with us. I'm thinking about one of my students last year who had a faculty member say, you just need to work less. And she was like, but I have to I live with my grandmother and I pay the mortgage. I can't work less. That's not an option. And so how do I support her in that space, right? Acknowledging that, not saying, well, you've created this barrier to success for yourself, but reframing it, this is the reality you live in.
Yeah, I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, right? So the issue is options for students, right? Is that we clearly know that there are populations that we're losing that were once here in higher education, and I can speak to community colleges specifically, that aren't here now, and that their absence is not good for them. It's not good for society. It's not good for our communities. So we are actively identifying those populations and recruiting those populations. The old way of recruiting is gone, right? We can't put something on our website that says, come to PVCC, it's the greatest place in the world, because a lot of populations that we're seeking that need us are not looking on the website. They don't have access to computers. They don't have the things that we take for granted. Again, another student-ready notion to say, well, our recruiting can just be on our website. Can't they just go to our website and see the programs that we have? No, that's not student-ready. That's not what our students are doing. Some are, but not all. So we're finding we're trying to find those students. We're finding ways to reach them in ways that they reach out and that they get their information from, whether that's social media platforms, texting, the church on Sunday, the local community neighborhood organization, whatever that is, and then we also have to have mechanisms in place when we recruit them and bring them to PVCC, is to acknowledge where they are, provide the supports for that they need. So we have student financial resource center for our students who are in degrees and certificates. We have a program for our short-term training that provides the necessary life needs that you have, childcare, reliable transportation, food, eyeglasses, the things that, money for books, those sort of things, because if you don't have those, you're not going to be successful. And we have to make sure that students who come to us have those needs relatively taken care of so they can devote their energy and time. So we have to have that. And then also, for a good example, is adults coming back. They've had 20, 30 years in the workforce. And for us to say, oh, well, yeah, you're coming back, but you know what, 5 years ago, that course that you took, it doesn't count anymore. Because it's there, the time lapse it's been too long since you took that course. Or no, we don't give you credit for prior learning for your 20 years. We can't give you any credit towards your degree. Sorry. Those are things that are really valuable to that population to move them forward and to give them what they need to move towards completion. And if we just treat everybody the same, everybody that walks through our door, we're not going to give you any credit for prior learning. We're not going to take care of your needs. That's just not going to help once we bring them to the door, if we can get them to the door, we've got to provide a lot of options depending on what populations we're talking about to ease that transition towards completion. And that's what we're working on. But that's the hard part. That's the part that takes a lot high touch, takes a lot of effort and energy. But gone are the days when we had people breaking our doors down to come to us, and they were, terrible to say, but somewhat expendable. For every student that we lost because they didn't have what they needed, or we put a barrier in front of them, there was 2 more behind them, and we just were trying to keep up. Those days are gone now. Now we have to be really intentional about recruiting students who need us the most, and then getting them to completion. Because if they leave us with a bag of credits or a half-done certificate or 5 days of training and no post-secondary credential, they've gained nothing. And that doesn't help them. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help the communities that we live in.
So as we think about kind of, coming full circle with this conversation, you've mentioned policies and procedures and re-examining our structures, and you've talked about high touch. And I know at Piedmont there's been from my kind of perspective, a real focus on making sure we have enough advisors, to work with students and re-examining how we're doing things like academic advising. But what are I'm sure there are folks listening and thinking, what in the world, how can we begin, to do this work at our institution? And so any tips or strategies that institutions can take to kind of get this ball rolling?
Yeah, I can, again, we're in the beginning of this work. We're committed to it. Everybody at the college is committed to it. Our new president, Dr. Runyon, is fully backing this and really a cheerleader for this work. And so, we've really developed some action plans of things we're going to do in this first year under these buckets. And I can give you a couple of examples of those. And so, on clarifying the pathway, if you're in a health sciences program, nursing, radiography, boy, that's really laid out for you specifically. You know exactly what courses to take in what order, and there's a lot of prerequisites. You got to do this one before you do this one. Our students don't have any challenges with that. But if you're in a lot of transfer degrees, there really is, it's the Wild Wild West. Hey, take this, whatever fits in your schedule. And we really haven't really detailed mapped our course taking structure to allow a student to follow the pathway all the way through if they want to, right? We don't want them getting off the path, but we got to define that path. So what we're doing is bringing teams of faculty according to what we call areas of interest. People call them meta majors, people call them pathways, whatever you want to talk about, sort of groupings of degrees and certificates that are related. And we're having our faculty teams who are assigned to those areas of interest and advisors working together to map those programs. And the advisors are key because as most people on the call might know, is the advisors oftentimes know what those hangups are, what those crazy, well, you should really do this before you do this, because they know that intricacies of those course taking patterns. And so the faculty, it's a win-win, right? The faculty begin to know their programs really, really well. They know where their students get hung up, where they may not know that, if nobody tells them. And then our advisors get to work with faculty who are experts in the area, right? And so it's just this mutual win. And so we're bringing those teams together, and by May, we call it MAPS by May. By May, we want to have all of our programs mapped, course taking all the way from beginning to end, with embedded some of those sort of momentum metrics that we know that if you take English in the first semester and math in the first year, your chances of success dramatically increase. We're putting that into our maps. And we're kind of starting with the end and working backwards. We want to say, what is it that this degree is intended to do? Go into the workforce or transfer? And then let's take those outcomes and map it backwards to make sure that what we're mapping actually leads to the outcome we're looking for that program. So that's one thing in the clarify the pathways for students. And I think that work is foundational to begin the process of policies and procedures and scheduling and all those other things. Helping students choose and enter the pathway. You mentioned it, Meg, it's about advising. We've tried many different iterations of advising over the years, and I think many people have. Now what we love is the coaching model. It's the assigning a student, one person who, I read a great article that said, everybody who goes to college needs somebody that has their back. And that's exactly what we're doing. We want one person to be able to, that student to go to should they need anything. Now that person may not be able to solve that problem. They may have to refer, but it's one person. It's the advisor and the student being together through the entire process of the college experience. That model goes a long way to success, more than just sort of saying, hey, do it yourself, check in with an advisor every time before you register. It goes back to some of the most successful students are athletes who, because they coach. Their coaches are on them saying, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. There's other, that's a broad strokes, but that whole model of having somebody there telling you and helping you and reminding you and nudging you and to be a resource is huge. And that's the model we're going to. Helping students stay on the pathway, academic support, robust tutoring, having them develop an academic plan, the systems technology solutions like EAB Navigate and other technologies that alert us immediately when a student has gone off the path, and that we can intervene very quickly and find that student and get them back on the path. And then scheduling, right? Scheduling for completion. Colleges, deans, I was a dean once. I didn't really work with my fellow deans on scheduling. I picked the times that were the most important in the classes, and so we oftentimes put barriers in front of students and their course taking patterns. We have to schedule for completion so that we don't say that your requirement in this semester is at the same time that your other requirement is, and therefore you can't take it. So therefore you're now delayed another semester for your completion. And then the students are learning. That's just really engaging with our faculty on high impact practices. We're doing a lot of this now. A lot of our faculty are doing this, but really providing professional development to help those who are not doing it or don't know or want or are interested in doing other things. It's learning communities, it's internships, it's first year seminars, it's research opportunities for undergraduate students, global learning, study abroad, capstone courses, all those things that are high impact practices that really enrich the students' experience doing all that. And if we do all that in the first year, which is a lot, right? If we do all, but it's not, it's really low hanging fruit. I think we're going to see our success numbers change. We'll see some changes in the policies and procedures and practices that we do, and we become even more of a student-ready college. At that point, look at the data, see the gaps that are still exist after that, and continue in the cycle on and on and on.
So I have to ask this question, is there, and it's all exciting, like this all excites me because I think, it's such important work. And those of you who have not had the chance to come visit Piedmont Virginia Community College, and John and I would welcome you to do so. It is the most positive learning environment. And the moment you walk in the doors of the building, you feel very welcomed. And I've been at lots of institutions. And so I think I can say that without terrible bias about what a warm and welcoming learning environment it is. Are we engaging with our students at all in asking them, hey, we have this big vision of being a student-ready institution, and these are the things that we're doing? Are there, because sometimes students have great insight into the gaps that we don't see, right?
Yeah, and do we have a defined initiative to engage students in that process? No. Should we? Probably. But what we see is that we will be engaging with students much more directly. Our faculty will be engaging students because they'll be engaged with high impact practices that engage the faculty and student together. Our advisors are going to be talking to our students much more. Instead of the students seeing 3 advisors or 4 advisors in the year, they see one person. So I think there are inherent connections and engagement opportunities that we're doing the high touch, those changes. But you bring up a really good point, and oftentimes that we forget to engage the student in the things that we're doing, and we certainly need to find those opportunities to get feedback from our students. We do climate surveys and things along that line. And we'll probably begin to shift those climate surveys to ask them, in the student ready model, what are the barriers they're perceiving? What are the things? We do things like the CESI Community College Survey of Student Engagement, which gives us great data about engagement. So those are some of the informal ways, but we're always seeking formal ways that make sense to engage all students, and that's the challenge. All students, right? We don't want the great prepared students who are going to, because their gaps are much different than those who are coming back after being absent for long, or first time and have low GPAs or ESL or whatever sort of demographic you want to pick. So so you bring up a really good point.
Well, I'll be excited to see this work continue to unfold. It's such important work, and I'm thinking about just my first year experience classes, and a lot of them have said, I know I'm here and I know I need to be here, but I don't really know the path that I'm on. So it's good that we're helping them clarify that very intentionally, right?
Yeah, and I think the one thing is it's the why, right? I keep saying that, and people need to know the why. Students need to know the why. Why do I want to go to college? And I don't know that we're doing as a nation doing a really good job with that. And it's clear that your outcomes post-secondary with a college degree are much better than without it, right? And we're not articulating that. It's kind of inherent knowledge, but we need to articulate that more. And I think everybody on this call probably agrees that post-secondary education is the key to success, and we need to be more explicit about that, because there are voices that are saying that it's not. But we also need to challenge our folks, and what we've always at PVCC, and other institutions are probably like this as well, we've always been dedicated to student success. I don't know any institution that isn't, right? But we asked ourselves the why. Why do we want to do this work? Why are we doing this work? What is it that we want to achieve? And when we came down to defining student success, that clarified it for us. Completion, getting them to graduate with a degree, certificate, or post-secondary credential. Simple as that. Simple as that. And that's the why that I needed, because for many years I was like, well, I kind of know why we're doing this, because we want students to meet their goals. But those goals can be this big, right? Our goal for them is to complete. And if we are focused on that, we zero in on that, and we do everything that we can to get them there, we're going to be successful. They're going to be successful, and we're meeting our mission.
John, I think that's a wonderful wrap up, because we have hit 12:45, and I very much want to honor your time, because I know it is incredibly busy time this fall semester. But thank you. This has just been so, I've taken pages of notes, and I'm already thinking about how I'm going to approach class a little differently on Monday when we come in and talk goal setting. And as a reminder, what is your why? You may be my quote. I always have a quote each week. You may get to be my quote of the week, Dr. Donnelly. So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for your time today and all this insight you've shared with us and the good work that you're doing on behalf of our students, both in Virginia and outside of it as well.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I think it's important work. I think it's a new environment, new day, challenging to say the least. But this work that we do in higher education at our institutions is really, really important work. And I salute everybody out there who's doing it, and appreciate their hard work as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Everybody have a great weekend. We hope that there is time this weekend for rest and renewal. And I think John reminds us that we're doing important work, and keep it up, because I know it's an exciting time of the year as we start a new fall semester, but also we need to continue to kind of build ourselves up and remind ourselves about the important work we're doing. So thanks all. Everybody have a great weekend, and we look forward to having you join us next month for our Friday 5 Live conversation. Take care.